The earthquakes are increasing. The storms and the power of the storms is increasing. Are we? What are we looking at exactly here?
Well, I believe, from all indications that I've been studying, this 2012, December 21st, 2012 thing was, well, I should say, misinterpreted to be an event that would happen instantaneously. Nothing in the universe happens instantaneously. 2012, December 2012, is indeed a landmark regarding the position of the planets and position of our solar system relative to our galaxy. And nothing happens in one day, not on a cosmic scale like that, but this is the beginning. 2012, 2013 is the beginning of tremendous Earth changes. We've seen the beginning actually way back, going back a decade, around 2002. I've been studying the meteorological changes from 2004, and I've been documenting them. And believe me, even those who don't study it intensely, as I have been documenting, these people even realize how serious and how drastically the Earth's climate has changed. Everybody recognizes that. So it's not an instantaneous change that occurred in December of 2012, but it signals the threshold of the great changes that are occurring on the Earth over the next several years as this dwarf star gets closer and closer to our sun. It's causing excitations of the sun. And incidentally, even though we cannot see the dwarf star yet, well, at least we can't, but the government probably is seeing it right now. It's an infrared body, incidentally. It emits infrared light, and therefore it can only be seen with infrared or X-ray type telescopes, which the government has in space. So they've got our tax money to pay for and to acquire the greatest technology available, and they've got our tax money to acquire the greatest scientists, astronomers, and astrophysicists available, so that they can keep track of it while they keep us in the dark. If we were allowed to know what was going on, then they would lose control of the population. So it's imperative for them to keep us deceived. And incidentally, we could see evidence of a crime, as President Nixon once said regarding the Kennedy assassination. He said it's not the crime that leads criminal, but it's the cover-up that leads you to the criminal. And likewise, we could see the cover-up from the government for all these years. And that gives us strong information and a strong indication that something is out there, because there's been so much done to cover it up. And look at how they are scurrying, how the power elite are now scurrying to go underground. That's becoming quite well known. Governor Jesse Ventura did a special on True TV called Apocalypse 2012, in which he actually was able to go into the underground facilities at Cheyenne Mountain, in the bowels of Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, I believe it was, and videotape the head of security, Colonel Wynn, the head of security down there, and that man told Michael Braverman, the producer of the show, that no one would be allowed in there. The troops down there were ordered to defend that facility at all costs. They had 13-ton steel doors that would be slammed shut, and anybody who tried to get in there when the natural disasters were occurring on the surface would be repelled by these highly trained troops. So there's your evidence there. We've got it right out of the mouth of the head of security, a colonel, retired colonel, working for the New World Order, the power elite who are going underground. From his own mouth, he stated that we're going to defend this facility. There's a great deal of other evidence too, but the major evidence comes from the U.S. government itself, going way back several decades ago. before they had a chance to clamp down, before the National Security Agency had a chance to muzzle the scientists at NASA, we got reports that are now got records of their newspaper articles. The New York Times, I have it right in front of me. In fact, they put it on the internet, so everybody has it now. Copies of this actual New York Times article.
John, I'm getting complaints that these are that the sound isn't very good. Let me call you right back on this and see if we can. Well, wait a minute. No, let me do this. Hang on a second.
Due to the page you're calling back into the live show, we're reconnecting you now.
Alright. We got that. Let's try this. That sounded pretty good. Let's see if we can switch that around. Alright. Talk to me now. See if that's any better here.
Okay, just to recap, we have the testimony from the Chief of Security at the underground facility at Cheyenne Mountain, stating that he was going to defend that facility against anyone who tried to get in during any kind of catastrophe. Indicating that disasters are approaching our planet, and that the power elite are scurrying to go underground, but first they must consolidate their power by creating a new world order, one world government. Hopefully you can hear me pretty well right with that adjustment. Well, we see the one world government. That's another very clear and protracted piece of evidence, very long standing. We've seen for at least 2 decades the growth and the development of the new world order, the one world government. They have to do this, consolidate power, before the disasters occur, because when these earthquakes and volcanic eruptions occur, there will be a dislocation of modern society as we know it. Electronic systems, computer systems, power grid will be put out of commission. There will be a destruction from the earthquakes of the natural gas lines, and this was stated by a former government worker, not a worker, actually a government scientist and engineer. I cannot recall his name, but he was recently on the Power Hour with Joyce Riley, and he stated that when these disasters occur, that there's going to be a fracturing of the underground gas lines, natural gas and gasoline pipelines. So you can see that, and also the highways and seaports will be knocked out due to tsunamis and tidal waves. So you can see that our civilization will be abruptly brought to a primitive state. So the power elite know this, and there's nothing they can do about it. They do not like this situation, because no matter how they try, it takes them out of control and disrupts their empire. But they can only do the best they can given the natural disasters. And what they consider to be the best they can do is to consolidate all power, consolidate their grip on the world, try at least, by going underground, creating a world war with nuclear destruction, and then using that nuclear destruction as an excuse to bring people back to under their control worldwide with no nation states whatsoever.
Well, they wrote it in stone, John. The Georgia Guidestones reduce the world's population to a manageable 500 million. That'd be 499 million slaves and 1 million elite, I believe. You're absolutely right. They are moving us to a world war. It's been planned for 100 years. Now, this don't have anything to do with Planet X. I'm sure that Planet X might be in the neighborhood. I don't think it's going to hit the Earth. I don't think the changes in the sunspots and the climate and all that Yeah, that may happen naturally. There is an outside influence on there, the scientists have found. But we don't know how close it's going to come or how badly it's going to disrupt it. But they don't need that. All they would do, now Israel, which I believe is our enemy, Israel blew up 9/11. Israel was responsible, Mossad was responsible for 9/11, Mossad was responsible for Sandy Hook. This was another way to take the guns, and they like killing children, don't they?
Yes, you're right in everything you say, that they indeed, the killing children, they realize that it causes great public distress among the people, and it would falsely cause the public to cry out for gun control. But also they like killing children because they're satanic, and these children, the killing of children is a sacrifice to their god, Satan, the devil.
Well, that you've just mentioned the oldest. You've just mentioned the oldest religion on earth is Satanism. The Masons worship Lucifer as the god of this world. And frankly, I'm not sure that Lucifer was the bad guy. He might have just been demonized like I was when I started the militias, you know?
No, I disagree with that, Clay.
Do you?
I cannot let that go by. But so it's your opinion. I respect that.
Well, the Lucifer may not be the devil. The devil that, as some people refer to it, they called Yahweh or Baal, B-A-A-L. In times long ago. So who knows? But this is certainly a war between good and evil, isn't it?
Yes, and as someone who has studied and prayed the Bible and who communes with God our Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ, I can tell you that this is prophesied and defined very clearly throughout the Bible, from the beginning of the Old Testament to the end of the New Testament. That, yes, there is a combat between God, the Creator, who is Yeshua, Jesus, and Satan, the adversary. So, yeah, it gets very deep, but I don't think we could get into it right now. However, the Bible prophecy aspect of these earth changes is something that we should talk about maybe in a little while. But first, I'd like to give you the solid documentation, because I want to convince people. I don't want people to look at us with a suspicious eye that we are not giving them real proof, that we're giving them metaphysical, spiritual evidence, but not real solid evidence. So what I'd like to do is show you that the government itself, before they were muzzled, actually knew about this incoming dwarf star. And incidentally, a dwarf star is extremely large. It's a baby star. It never got big enough to actually ignite as our sun has ignited. But it's defined to have a mass of about a minimum. This is the smallest dwarf star that scientists and astrophysicists define it. They say it's can be as small as 3 Jupiter masses. Now, 1 Jupiter mass is 318 Earth masses. Okay, so 3 Jupiter masses is getting close to 1,000 Earth masses. So the puniest size of this incoming dwarf star is somewhere around 1,000 Earth masses. That means as it passes by, and you're right, it's not going to hit Earth because it is being gravitationally drawn in by the sun, and that's why what it does is comes around in a loop around the sun. It's in a highly elliptical orbit from deep space, coming back and forth, traveling back and forth between 2 suns, our sun and a distant sun many billions of miles away. I visualize these 2 suns as being analogous to 2 tennis players. Our sun is the tennis player on the near court, and our distant dead sun, many billions of miles away, is the tennis player on the far court, and this dwarf star is the tennis ball being batted back and forth, gravitationally being hurled back and forth by the 2 suns. And to show you evidence of it, even in this article from the New York Times, scientists are stating that Indeed, most suns have a twin sun, a companion sun, far, far away. So there's, in this 1983 New York Times article, the scientists are stating that it's very likely that our sun also has a distant sun. And that's how you get the pendulum, celestial pendulum effect of a dwarf star being gravitationally pulled from one sun back to the other sun, back and forth like a pendulum. When it comes in and it loops around our sun, they loop around under our ecliptic plane. The ecliptic plane is that invisible disk in space on which all the planets revolve around the sun. That's called the ecliptic. Well, it comes in below this ecliptic table, so to speak, and it comes through the table from below and then loops over the top of the table, comes around the sun. The sun is visualized as a sort of a light, a lamp at the center of the table. It loops over the top of the sun, and in so doing, it has to come over Earth's orbital path also, as well as the orbital paths of all the other planets. And in so doing, it comes maybe many millions of miles away, but because it's so large, its gravitational pull is still felt over that great distance of many millions of miles. And it pulls on the Earth sort of like a magnet would pull on a steel ball. You can envision the Earth as as an iron ball revolving around the sun, and then this huge magnet, large magnet, comes flying over the top of the sun, over the top of the Earth's orbital path. You can visualize this magnet actually exerting a force at a distance to pull and tip the Earth like you would tip a teacup over. And this has been observed by geologists, ancient geologists who have studied ancient geology, where the Earth actually tips over from the North Pole. The North Pole rotates vertically so that the North Pole goes toward the south and the South Pole goes toward the north. My geology teacher many years ago, a geology professor, told us when no one had ever heard of this planet X many years ago in college. He stated that at one time in Earth's ancient past, the Earth has actually precessed or rotated, wobbled on its axis, and we don't know why, he said. Well, now we're finding out why. It can only happen by some tremendous gravitational force actually pulling it away from the sun's influence momentarily for a period of time, maybe a period of a few days or a week.
John,
That's what happened.
Didn't the Bible, now I wrote a novel about this about 45 years ago. I haven't published it yet because I had 45 years of research that I needed to do to make it work properly. But I believe, and I base this on something I got out of the Bible, that at one time the Earth stopped and the sun went in the opposite direction. Is that...
Yes, this has been recorded by ancient historians. Pliny the Elder was a Roman, the best I can recall, was a Roman historian, and these ancient historians got information from other ancient record keepers, such as the Egyptian priests. These Egyptian priests prided themselves on keeping records back many, many centuries. And when famous Greek philosopher, statesman, historian, Plato and his forebear, Solon, great lawgiver, Solon of Greece, Solon went to visit the priests of Egypt. And this was around 350 BC, somewhere around there, I believe. And he spoke to the priests, and the priest said, "You Greeks are like children. You don't have the historical records that we Egyptians have. And we've kept these records for many centuries meticulously." And he stated that at one time in Earth's past, the Earth actually changed direction in its rotation, such that the sun rose in the west and set in the east. And the only way that this could happen is if a large gravitational body came close enough to Earth, like a magnet again. If you get the magnet close enough to that iron ball, it can actually move it at a distance, cause it change in its rotation. So this has been recorded by ancient historians, indeed, and many cultures too. In fact, we have records from not only of the Earth changing in its direction, but pausing for several days. It's called the 3 days of darkness, whereby if you it happens to be nighttime when this gravitational body comes by, the Earth pauses in its rotation and it remains nighttime for 3, 4, maybe even 5 days. But likewise, if it happens to be daylight on the other side of the world, where it is daylight, you have sunlight for 3, 4, 5 days because the Earth has paused in its rotation. We have evidence of this. Emperor Yaju, going back many centuries to around 1650 BC, stated in his imperial annals, and I got this information from people who have studied this, and from books that have been written by scholars who have recorded this information, so it's not just hearsay. It's coming from many books that have been published, one of which is called The Greatest Story Never Told, and another one is called Pole Shift by John White. So those are two books you might want to look up. The Greatest Story Never Told and Pole Shift. But they state, as Emperor Yashu stated that in his imperial annals, that the sun, it remained daylight for several days amidst these tremendous natural catastrophes, great floods, earthquakes, and their fields, the regions of China were inundated with water, and it took them 12 years to dig canals to drain the water off out of these flooded areas. China was devastated. Likewise, we have records coming from the same period of time, different civilizations who did not know each other because they were not in contact. Those ancient days, they were not in contact with one another. Yet those records were traced to the same time period. That's the Chinese records, the records of Egypt, where great disasters occurred also. The records of Central and South America. So we're circling the globe, acquiring the data and the records from various civilizations. They all line up chronologically to have occurred at the same time, and they're all saying the same thing, that these natural disasters occurred. Yet during the time of the 3 days of sunlight in China, the Aztecs, the Incas of Peru, the Mexicans, the Mayans of Central America record 3 days of darkness when there was tremendous hurricanes, windstorms, tornadoes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, all occurring because they were on the dark side of the earth. I could go through some of the written records and read some of them to you.
All right, hold on just a minute, John. Hold on just a minute. It seems like we've got two things here occurring almost simultaneously. One of those is, of course, we've got weather changes. Now they're trying to say it's global warming, and we were freezing down here in Texas just a few days ago. Big ice storm came through. I don't know, and scientists have been threatened for telling you that Al Gore's global warming is all bullshit. And the other thing we have, which is documented and easy to prove, Planet X, because they control all of the information that we get, we're kind of limited on what tools we can use to research this and how to prepare for it. Now, they are preparing, our governments all over the world are preparing for something, so obviously they must have information that we don't have. They're building these underground bases that we spoke of in the first half that Jesse Ventura looked at. So they know something's happening. They've also put out information that says the sun or a nuclear bomb set off right in the middle of America, up a few miles in the air up there, which a number of countries are capable of doing, and we would be back in the 19th century. All of our computers, the gasoline pumps wouldn't work, nothing would work, the electricity wouldn't work. They're talking about EMP, And third, we've also, and I've got this up on my Facebook site, about Judy Wood talking about the World Trade Centers dustifying. Now, you know, we've got other people that are arguing, no, she's full of it, she don't know what she's talking about, no, she's probably Jewish, no, but the fact is the buildings did dustify. They dropped in a cloud of dust and half the steel had evaporated into dust. Now, was that a nuclear bomb, a laser from space, or directed energy weapons? I don't think it really matters that much at this point. Because Judy Wood says she's not trying to speculate on who was responsible, and I think a good investigator certainly needs to look at motive and profit, and if you do that, it falls at the feet of a rogue criminal country called Israel. What do you think? John did
I agree that the leaders of Israel are behind a lot of these terror catastrophes that have occurred. 9/11 and also the Oklahoma City destruction. A lot of these shootings, yeah, the Israeli Mossad is closely paired up with the CIA.
Yes.
And these two organizations, both of which are satanic, the CIA can be proven to be run and controlled by Satan worshippers. Now, remind you, these people believe it. They worship Satan. I don't. Some people say, oh, I don't believe that. It doesn't matter if the listener doesn't believe in Satan. These evil doers at the top of the CIA, the Mossad, they indeed believe in Satan and they worship Satan. Now, the people of Israel are just as ignorant, as dumbed down as we Americans. So we have to look at the leadership as the real criminals, the leadership of this country. Just as the American people are not the real culprits in all the disasters created by the U.S. government, the Israeli people are not the real culprits in all the disasters.
No, they were forced to move.
The Israeli government.
You're absolutely right here. The elite hide behind the Jewish people so they can accuse you of anti-Semitism if you talk about what these New World leader or these banksters. It's the banksters out here. It ain't the common people, and the banksters want to keep you dumb and ignorant, so you keep paying interest on something that you don't know at all. Show me the law. But we're anti-government, we talk about that. We're racist if we talk about the millions or the thousands of people murdered in America by illegal aliens. They don't want you to talk about Israel, a safe country that is responsible, and the CIA and Mossad both work, in my opinion, both work for the banksters. They control the oil, they control our energy, and we're their slaves. They have basically made us into economic slaves, and they don't want you to know the truth. And the controls are tightening. Agenda 21 is coming up, and that's a UN plan for world government. People are rebelling, and now we've got some positive news here. Sheriff Mack, who I've known for years, has started the County Sheriff's Organization, CSPOA, County Sheriffs and Police Officers Association. And we've got 200 sheriffs that say they ain't going to go with gun control. I think the next point of what they've done Sandy Hook for, what they did Waco for, was to see what they made us do. They resisted by force of arms. Turn in your guns, like Dianne Feinstein. That's the next move, so they can round up, imprison, and murder 60 million of us the way they did 60 million Russians after the Bolsheviks took over, installed communism, who one Rabbi Weiss referred to as, some call it communism, I call it Judaism for the masses. Go ahead.
I agree with you that they indeed want to, they're desperate to disarm us so that they can exterminate us. So it is imperative that everyone remain armed because they are planning to kill us. This is not hyperbole, this is not hysteria. It's a known fact. In fact, the rulers of this world, the worshippers of Satan, again, I keep on telling you that these people worship the devil, even though others don't believe in the devil. These people indeed do believe in the devil, and that is their God that they worship. They know that the only way they can maintain power is by worshiping the devil. It doesn't matter if we, the uninformed Americans, think it's crazy. I can show you proof that they worship Satan. Their own book.
Well, and let me touch on that.
Yes. And Dogma by
Albert Pike. It's sitting right here. They worship Lucifer. Jacob Javits' assistant, Rosenthal, I believe was his name. He said, yeah, most Jews worship Lucifer. Most Jews worship Lucifer. They just don't admit it.
You know, actually, I don't agree with that. Most Jews are just like you and me. They're trying to make a living. They want to make money. You know, they want to get ahead. Of course, many Jewish people have been brought up to get a good, high-paying job and to make money and all that. But then again, many Americans are brought up with the same mentality. But as far as worship, most Jews don't even care about religion. They don't even care about God, just like most Americans don't care about religion. They don't care about God. It's these evil leaders at the top we've got to focus on.
Yeah.
We've got to bring the dumbed-down Americans and the dumbed-down Jewish people from Israel and the dumbed-down people throughout the world together to unite against this evil minority at the very top, this evil cabal comprised of Satan worshippers in Israel, Satan worshippers leading all the countries of the world. That's what we have to do, unite one another by friendship, brotherhood.
I found my website here, right above my books, list the 3 books that I've written and have for sale. War has been declared on all of us. Any religion not theirs is to be destroyed. You'd figure Satan gave the kings of his kingdom to someone since Christ refused it. Who did the keys of Satan's kingdom go to? Simple. Those who serve him best. I can call myself an elephant all day long, but does that mean I am? So no matter what religion they hide behind, whether it's Jew, Christian, Muslim, whatever religion or lack of it, if all they learn from and live by, if they all learn and live by a satanic Bible, a book of Satanism, it's what all world leaders learn from. Anyone who's so blind not to see the Talmud as it's far from the 5 books of Moses and God is really in big trouble. But these people are cowards. They do not openly admit their wariness. Satanists, Temple of Set, OTO, Golden Dawn, 33rd degree or higher Masons, Jesuits, Talmudic Jews, many others who all serve the same God, Lucifer. Do not care. They don't care whom you worship. Now,
right. So anyway, they plan, you're right, they plan to exterminate us after they disarm us. And that's why they're so desperate to create all these horrible shootings and all these, the World Trade Center was designed to bring us into the Middle East, bring our army into the Middle East and fight a horrible bloody war for the spoils of this New World Order. But anyway, God is bringing them a real surprise. He's swinging a wrecking ball toward Earth, and these demonic, evil leaders at the very top of the world, the top of the pyramid, are going to be horribly terrorized and destroyed in the coming years. Well, I can show you the scientific proof that this body exists, this dwarf star, conservatively estimated to be about 1,000 Earth masses, will have such gravitational force, such magnetic force upon Earth, that it will cause a rippling and a wrinkling of Earth's crust on top of the molten mantle, which is incidentally how mountains formed many thousands of years ago.
now, is this, what is the latest? What, are they still denying it's there? They built the telescope at the South Pole to be able to monitor it, I think.
Yes. That South Pole telescope cost many millions of dollars. It's a big building with an infrared telescope right at the South Pole, the harshest conditions you can imagine. No one would set up an observatory down there unless there was the only place they could view this incoming body. which comes in from below the ecliptic, below that invisible disk in space, on which all the planets revolve around the sun. Dr. Robert S. Harrington, the chief astronomer of the United States Naval Observatory, stated this several decades ago, around 1990, 91, that this object, he had done tremendous calculations and observations and proved that this object was indeed there. But let me take you back to the beginning. Before Dr. Harrington was, well, many of us believe he was murdered because he was about to reveal that he had discovered this planet, this brown dwarf star coming in, and he was about to tell us that indeed it's being drawn in by our sun's great gravitational force field. Well, before he got a chance to bring that to the public, he died very abruptly of cancer. Cancer side, as you know, cancer assassination is well within the technology of the CIA and the Mossad. Many people who were about to talk and say things incriminating to the elite have been murdered by cancer. Jack Ruby was one, James McDougal was another, there were many. So that's how Dr. Harrington was killed back in the early 1990s when he was about to reveal this. But let me read this article to you. The New York Times, Sunday, January 30th, 1983. We're talking about 30 years ago, before the National Security Agency came in and muzzled all these scientists. I'm going to read the article from the New York Times, January 30th, 1983, titled, Clues Get Warm in the Search for Planet X, by John Noble Wilford. Quote, something out there beyond the farthest reaches of the known solar system seems to be tugging at Uranus and Neptune. Some gravitational force keeps perturbing the two giant planets, causing irregularities in their orbits. The force suggests a presence far away and unseen, a large object that may be the long-sought Planet X. Evidence assembled in recent years has led several groups of astronomers to renew the search for this 10th planet. They are devoting more time to visual observations with the 200-inch telescope at Mount Palomar in California. They are tracking two Pioneer spacecraft, now approaching the orbit of distant Pluto, to see if variations in their trajectories provide clues to the source of the mysterious force. Now, let me interject. There's these wonderful scientific pieces of evidence right here. They talk about the two Pioneer spacecraft, Pioneer 10 and 11. Now, we know, because it's already occurred years ago, that the Pioneer 10 and 11 were sent out by NASA into deep space in the area. One of them was sent out in one direction toward where they believed their calculations showed that this massive dwarf star, Planet X, existed. And they knew that if the space probe got close enough to this massive planet would actually exert a gravitational pull on the space probe, pull it off of its course, and by the pulling, the amount of degree of the pull off its trajectory, and by the location of that pull off of its trajectory, they would be able to determine and verify the location of this dwarf star and the relative mass of this dwarf star, which they indeed did. They found it to be where they expected it to be with the Pioneer 10 spacecraft. So, and I'll resume reading this article, but I just want you to know that the Pioneer 10, the discovery of the planet X, is a major, irrefutable piece of evidence to show that it exists, and it indeed is being pulled in to murder our sun. I'll continue reading. There are two Pioneer spacecraft now approaching the orbit of Pluto to see if variations in their trajectories provide clues to the source of this mysterious force. And they are hoping that a satellite-borne telescope launched last week, this is 1983, will detect heat signatures from the planet or whatever it is that's out there. It's called the Infrared Astronomical Satellite, and it was boosted into a 560-mile-high polar orbit. Incidentally, I presume that's the South Pole orbit, orbiting around the South Pole. Tuesday night from Vandenberg Air Force Base, California. It represents an $80 million venture by the United States, Britain, and the Netherlands. In the next 6 or 7 months, This is 1983 now. In the next 6 or 7 months, the telescope is expected to conduct a wide-ranging survey of nearly all the sky, detecting sources not of ordinary light, but of infrared radiation, which is invisible to the human eye and largely absorbed by the atmosphere. Scientists thus hope that this new telescope will chart thousands of infrared-emitting objects that have gone undetected: stars, interstellar clouds, asteroids, and, with any luck, this object that pulls at Uranus and Neptune. So now, this is good historical background. This is wonderful. The last time a serious search of the skies was made, it led to the discovery in 1930 of Pluto, the ninth planet. But the story begins more than a century before that, after the discovery of Uranus in 1781 by the English astronomer and musician William Herschel. Until then, the planetary system seemed to end with Saturn. As astronomers observed Uranus, noting irregularities in its orbital path, many speculated that they were witnessing the gravitational pull of an unknown planet. So began the first planetary search based on astronomers' predictions, which ended in the 1840s with the discovery of Neptune, almost simultaneously by English, French, and German astronomers. But Neptune was not massive enough to account entirely for the orbital behavior of Uranus. Indeed, Neptune itself seemed to be affected by a still more remote planet. In the late 19th century, 2 American astronomers, William Pickering and Percival Lowell, predicted the size and approximate location of this trans-Neptunian body, which astronomer Lowell called Planet X. So we see that scientists going back over 100 years had named this object. 200 years ago they detected it, and over 100 years ago they named it Planet X. So it's not a sci-fi fantasy, it's reality. Years later, Pluto was detected by Clyde Tombaugh, working at the Lowell Observatory in Arizona. Several astronomers, however, suspected it might not be the Planet X of prediction. Of course, I'll skip a little bit. We know Pluto's way too small to cause that kind of a gravitational pull. But I'll go on and skip a little bit to save some time. Recent calculations by the United States Naval Observatory, that's Dr. Harrington, who we believe was murdered. Recent calculations by the United States Naval Observatory have confirmed the orbital perturbations exhibited by Uranus and Neptune, which Dr. Thomas C. Van Flandern, an astronomer at the observatory, says could be explained by, quote, a single undiscovered planet, unquote. He and his colleague, Dr. Robert Harrington, whom we believe was murdered, calculate that the 10th planet, now here's where they grossly underestimate the size of it, I think because they were forced to sort of keep it under their hats and not alarm the public. They grossly underestimate the size. They calculate the 10th planet should be 2 to 5 times more massive than Earth and have a highly elliptical orbit that takes it some 5 billion miles beyond that of Pluto. Now here's a key statement right here. This proves everything. Hardly next to Earth, 5 billion miles beyond Pluto is hardly next to Earth, still within the gravitational influence of our sun. And remember that phrase. This is a statement from the scientists themselves, the astronomers, the astrophysicists. Even though it's that far out, it's within the gravitational influence. And I'm speaking off the cuff now. Digressing from the article to tell you that when you see an object that gets within the gravitational field of another body, that object is inexorably drawn in for that larger body. For example, when we see meteors that come close enough to come within the gravitational influence of Earth, what happens? You see it thousands of times over the years, that those meteors get sucked into Earth's gravitational force field, and they get pulled toward the Earth, and they accelerate and crash into the Earth. So this is a well-known phenomenon of objects gravitationally pulled into Earth by Earth's gravitational force field. Likewise, our sun has a tremendous gravitational force field. In fact, the sun happens to be estimated at 1/3 of a millionth Earth masses. That's like 330,000 Earth masses is the estimated mass of the sun. So you can see this huge gravitational sun, gravitationally pulling sun, would pull on the planet X, because the scientists have already stated that this object, planet X, is indeed within a gravitational force field. There ain't no way that it can go escape. The only way it could escape is if it's revolving around the sun. Like, for example, why doesn't Saturn crash into the sun? Because Saturn is revolving around the sun, and its centrifugal force pulling it away. Centrifugal meaning fleeing, fugitive. Centrifleeting force causes it to stay at a balanced position in a rotating circle, in a revolving circle around the sun. That's why Saturn doesn't crash into the sun. And for the reason Earth does not crash into the sun. We have an object that is not revolving around the sun. It's coming in a highly elliptical orbit, almost like a straight line path. It's going to get sucked right in, just like that meteor gets sucked into Earth. It's going to get sucked in towards the sun, and that's indeed what has been happening since it was discovered back in 1983. You mentioned the South Pole Telescope. Yeah, they sighted it in 2008. There was leaks coming up from some of the people, and those people leaking information might have been murdered, because what happened was somebody put up images of this object, infrared photographic images from the South Pole Telescope. And you can still get them on Marshall Masters, YOWUNC.com. But it sure looked like what we know to be this object, a hazy red mass with a reddish cloud surrounding it. And it had a tail, sort of like if you had a candle, if you were sort of walked fast or ran with a candle in your hand through the dark night, the tail of that flame would form a tail trailing behind it as you move forward. That's the kind of tail that this comet had in the photograph that was leaked on YouTube. And it was taken down very quickly, but Marshall Masters was able to capture pictures of it. And you can see them on his website. And also, there's so much evidence. The Jesuits have the Vatican, we have found from an Italian researcher named Cristoforo Barbato, an editor of one of the UFO magazines out there in Rome, Italy, was approached by a man who claimed to be an agent for what's called Servizio Informazioni del Vaticano. That stands for the Vatican Intelligence Service, just like the Vatican CIA. And they have been tracking it. The Vatican has been tracking it for a long time. We have evidence not only from these Vatican sources, which incidentally also was very careful to study the man's credentials to make sure that the man was on the level. But what this man said was that the Vatican has influence in the U.S. They were able to get a hypersonic aircraft launched from, take off from Vandenberg Air Force Base. What was it, Edwards Air Force Base? Anyway, it went up, way up into space, with a carrier camera, the space camera. It was launching a satellite, I guess. I don't know the details of it, but I guess it had a propulsion system that once it escaped Earth's gravitational field, it was able to propel itself, probably on nuclear fuel, great distances toward the outer bounds of the solar system. And of course, this is highly secret. And this telescope was able to transmit images back, which were received at an abandoned Alaska oil refinery. This is the information that Cristoforo Barbato relayed to us. And they indeed have found it, and there was photographs of it. It's called the Vatican, it's called the Jesuit footage. You can type in that term, maybe it's still on the internet, on this Italian website. The Jesuit footage. If you type in those two words, closed in quotation marks, you might come up with it. But it showed the same thing, an object with some other objects revolving around it. It's like a mini solar system. Because, after all, our sun has a solar system. Our sun has planetary revolving around it because our sun is a large gravitational body, so it's captured other gravitational bodies. And James McCanny, the scientist, master of science, physicist, has gotten some contacts, and I have a recording from one of his programs over the past several years, where he states that he has leaks coming out all over the place from the U.S. military and from professional astronomers, stating that, quote, in mechanics terms, he was relating what they were telling him, that a mini solar system is moving into our solar system. And that's indeed what was shown in the Jesuit footage from Italy, from the Vatican, so that there are some moons or planets revolving around this object in space. So we've gotten, the more evidence you get from diverse sources, the more certain you can be that it does exist. Because again, the photos from the South Pole Telescope were put up on YouTube, and
the earthquakes are increasing, the storms and the power of the storms is increasing. Are we, what are we looking at exactly here?
well, I believe, from all indications that I've been studying, this 2012, December 21st, 2012 thing was, well, I should say, misinterpreted to be an event that would happen instantaneously. Nothing in the universe happens instantaneously. 2012, December 2012, is indeed a landmark regarding the position of the planets and position of our solar system relative to our galaxy. And nothing happens in one day, not on a cosmic scale like that, but this is the beginning. 2012, 2013 is the beginning of, it can only be seen with infrared or X-ray type telescopes, which the government has in space. So they've got our tax money to buy, to pay for, to acquire the greatest technology available, and they've got our tax money to acquire the greatest scientists, astronomers, and astrophysicists available, so that they can keep track of it while they keep us in the dark. If we were allowed to know what was going on, then they would lose control of the population. So it's imperative for them to keep us deceived. And incidentally, you know, we could see evidence of a crime, as President Nixon once said regarding the Kennedy assassination. He said it's not the crime that leads criminal, but it's the cover-up that leads you to the criminal. And likewise, we could see the cover-up from the government for all these years. And that tells us, gives us strong information, and a strong indication that something is out there would be repelled by these highly trained troops. So there's your evidence there. We've got it right out of the mouth of the head of security, a colonel, retired colonel, working for the New World Order, the power elite, who are going underground. From his own mouth, he stated that we're going to defend this facility. There's a great deal of other evidence, too, but the major evidence comes from the U.S. government itself, going way back several decades ago, before they had a chance to clamp down, before the National Security Agency had a chance to muzzle the scientists at NASA. We got reports that are now got records of their newspaper articles. The New York Times, I have it right in front of me. In fact, they put it on the internet, so everybody has it now. Copies of this actual New York Times article.
John, I'm getting complaints that these are that the sound isn't very good. Let me call.
Tremendous Earth changes. we've seen the beginning actually way back, going back a decade, around 2002. I've been studying the meteorological changes from 2004, and I've been documenting them. And believe me, even those who don't study it intensely, as I have been documenting, these people even realize how serious and how drastically the Earth's climate has changed. Everybody recognizes that. So it's not an instantaneous change that occurred in December of 2012, but it signals the threshold of this great changes that are occurring on the Earth over the next several years as this dwarf star gets closer and closer to our sun. It's causing excitations of the sun. And incidentally, even though we cannot see the dwarf star yet, well, at least we can't, but the government probably is seeing it right now. It's an infrared body, incidentally. It emits infrared light, and therefore, because there's been so much done to cover it up. And look at how they are scurrying, how the power elite are now scurrying to go underground. That's becoming quite well known. Governor Jesse Ventura did a special on True TV called Apocalypse 2012, in which he actually was able to go into the underground facilities at Cheyenne Mountain, in the bowels of Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, I believe it was, and videotaped the head of security, Colonel Wynn, the head of security down there, and that man told Michael Braverman, the producer of the show, that no one would be allowed in there. The troops down there were ordered to defend that facility at all costs. They had 13-ton steel doors that would be slammed shut, and anybody who tried to get in there when the natural disasters were occurring on the surface would